My brother accused my wife of cheating on me, but I found out he only said it to cover up his own betrayal. I'm not proud to admit that I once hurled a framed family photo across the living room so hard the glass shattered all over the floor. But that's exactly what happened the night I became convinced my wife, Natalie, was cheating on me. And, ironically, the same night I discovered I'd been betrayed by my own brother Ethan, in a way I never could have imagined. It all started with a single phone call. A simple sentence from Ethan that sent me down a path of suspicion, heartbreak, and rage. I still remember clutching my phone, my heart pounding, his voice low and intense. "Ryan, I think you need to know the truth about your wife." If I could go back in time and warn myself not to believe that truth, I would. But in that moment, all I could feel was a nauseating swirl of emotions. Shock, betrayal, disbelief. Until that phone call, I thought I had the happiest marriage of anyone I knew. Natalie and I had been married for 5 years, and yeah, we had our ups and downs, but we always found our way back to each other. My brother Ethan lived a few towns over. We'd been close our entire lives, and despite the usual sibling rivalries, I admired him. He was the kind of person who could walk into a room of strangers and walk out with half of them as new best friends. I envied his effortless charisma. That night, though, my admiration started to crack. He spoke like a man backed into a corner, swallowing hard between sentences. He claimed he had proof of Natalie's infidelity, though he was vague about the details. He asked if I could meet him at a local diner the next day. When I pressed for more information, he only repeated that he'd seen something I deserved to know. Part of me wanted to shout at him for even suggesting such a thing. Another part was terrified that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't lying. I tossed and turned in bed for hours, unable to shut off my mind. Natalie was sleeping quietly beside me, unaware of the storm brewing in my head. Several times I looked at her and thought about waking her up, about demanding an explanation right there and then, but I didn't. I reasoned that I'd hear Ethan out first, gather whatever proof he claimed to have, and only then confront her. That plan felt safe in my head, but it did nothing to calm the dread creeping through my veins. The next morning, Natalie left early for work. She gave me a goodbye kiss, and I forced a smile, but inside I felt guilty for even suspecting her. I told myself she'd look me in the eye if I confronted her, that I'd see her sincerity. I actually wanted to believe Ethan was pulling my leg or had misunderstood something. Maybe it was all an elaborate joke, though that seemed unlikely. My mind reeled with half-formed explanations. When I arrived at the diner, Ethan was already there, hunched over a cup of coffee. His hair was disheveled, and dark circles rimmed his eyes, like he'd been awake all night. He barely glanced up when I slid into the booth across from him. My stomach churned as he laid out 3 photographs. They were grainy, taken at a distance, but they appeared to show Natalie standing by a car late at night, talking to a man I didn't recognize. In one of them, it looked like the guy had his hand on her shoulder. The images weren't conclusive. Everything was too blurry to see faces clearly. But they were enough to make me swallow hard. "Who is he?" I demanded, struggling to keep my voice low in the crowded diner. Ethan shrugged, stirring his coffee with unnecessary force. "I don't know," he said, his gaze flicking to the side. "I was driving home from a friend's place when I spotted her. At first I wasn't sure it was even Natalie. Then I realized she had that red coat you bought her last Christmas. I pulled over and snapped these. Didn't know if you'd believe me otherwise." For a moment I let myself believe there had to be a harmless explanation. Maybe that man was a coworker, or a friend I'd never met, or even a distant cousin. But the tension in Ethan's face suggested otherwise. "Why didn't you say something earlier?" I asked. He sighed. "Honestly, I didn't want to mess things up, but I couldn't stay quiet. You need to know if she's cheating on you." On the ride home, I felt like a zombie. Every red light seemed to last an eternity, giving me more time to dwell on the pictures. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I was half convinced Natalie was hiding something. Every memory of her being late from work or texting on her phone with a coy smile began to warp into evidence of deceit. I hated myself for even thinking that, but the seed of doubt had taken root. Natalie came home that afternoon to find me staring out the window, the photos spread on the coffee table. She put her purse down and asked if something was wrong. My heart pounded so violently, I wondered if she could hear it. I gestured at the pictures. "Mind explaining these?" I tried to keep my tone measured, but my voice cracked. She frowned, picking them up. Her cheeks paled as she studied them, and then she looked at me with genuine confusion. "Ryan, this is me, obviously, but I was outside the office. I think that's Daniel, one of my coworkers. He was giving me a ride home because my car broke down 2 days ago, remember? I told you about that." She held out her phone, scrolling through messages with Daniel about towing her car. Sure enough, there were the timestamps, the location of the mechanic. Still, the photos seemed to show them late at night in a place that didn't look like any auto shop I knew. "Why does this look so suspicious?" she asked, eyes brimming with hurt. I found myself torn. Her evidence made sense, at least partially. Yet the pictures looked a lot more dubious than someone just picking her up from work. I'd also never seen her wearing that red coat at night, but maybe I just hadn't noticed. My head swam, and instead of calmly discussing it further, I snapped, "Then why didn't you mention you were out so late? That's not the mechanic's place. It's some random parking lot." Natalie stepped back, startled by my accusing tone. She insisted that Daniel had stopped at his sister's apartment complex to drop off a spare set of keys, and she waited by the car. She claimed the entire detour took maybe 15 minutes. I listened, but a stubborn knot in my gut refused to ease. Something about Ethan's demeanor told me he knew more, and I'd always trusted my brother. Why would he lie about something this huge? Things between me and Natalie got tense over the next few days. We tiptoed around each other. Every time she touched her phone, I involuntarily wondered if she was texting that man. Every time she came home 5 minutes later than usual, my thoughts spiraled. She, in turn, grew more upset and defensive, which only made me doubt her more. I felt like I was living with a stranger, trapped in an endless cycle of suspicion and distrust. When Ethan called to check on me, I confided in him, telling him all the details of her explanation. He listened with a sharp breath, then claimed he had something else to show me. That's when I started to feel truly uneasy. He sent me a screenshot of a text conversation, supposedly from Natalie's phone number, flirting with this Daniel guy. The messages were partially cropped, making them feel out of context. Still, reading them made my blood run cold. There were references to a late-night meetup, and wish we didn't have to sneak around. I nearly crushed my phone in my fist. Confronting Natalie about those texts led to the ugliest argument of our marriage. She outright denied ever sending them, offered to let me see her phone. In my anger, I refused, convinced she'd already deleted everything incriminating. We ended up shouting at each other. At one point, she grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her cheeks, begging me to believe her. I yanked away, hissing, "Don't touch me until you can be honest." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. That was the first time I felt the foundation of our relationship truly crack. 2 days later, I found myself in the living room, pacing back and forth while she stood near the front door, coat half on, tears gathering in her eyes. I had discovered more proof from Ethan, a short video clip showing Natalie and Daniel walking out of a restaurant together. It could have been a business dinner, but it was late, and their body language in the clip seemed way too familiar. Natalie insisted their entire department had gone out for dinner after finishing a major project, but the video only showed her and Daniel. My anger boiled over. I shouted accusations, rattling off everything Ethan had told me. She tried to explain, but I was too worked up to listen. I grabbed the nearest object, a framed photo of us at our wedding, and hurled it against the wall. The shattering glass was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Natalie flinched violently, her face contorted with pain and disbelief. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "You're believing everyone except me." She stepped around the shattered picture, grabbed her keys, and stormed out, slamming the door. I felt a pang of regret immediately, but it was drowned out by anger and pride. I told myself that if she couldn't calm down and come clean, maybe we needed time apart. When Ethan heard about the fight, he came over with a sympathetic expression, patting my shoulder like we were in some tragic scene of brotherly bonding. "I'm sorry it's come to this," he said. "I just didn't want you to be in the dark." I poured us both a drink, trying to steady my nerves. He told me he suspected Natalie had been unhappy in our marriage for a while and was using this Daniel guy as an escape. My stomach twisted in knots. Ethan's words were practically forcing me to believe I'd been blind all along, that my wife was leading a double life. Part of me wanted to question why he was so deeply involved, but I shrugged it off as brotherly concern. Why else would Ethan risk hurting me like this? In the aftermath of Natalie's departure, our home fell silent. The next morning, I found a note from her on the dining table. Her handwriting wavered, clearly written through tears. "I can't live under these accusations. I need some space to figure out what happened to us." Every word slammed against my chest like a hammer. Yet I felt too proud to chase after her. I told myself it was her fault for not telling me everything from the start, for not proving her innocence in a way I found convincing. I called in sick to work, spending the day slumped on the couch, staring at my phone. I kept flipping between anger at Natalie and guilt for believing rumors over the woman I love. But then, Ethan would text me again, mentioning another rumor he'd heard, or a friend of a friend who'd seen Natalie with Daniel. It's like he was making sure I stayed angry, ensuring my doubts wouldn't fade. A week later, I was a wreck. My nights were sleepless. I barely ate. Friends started asking if we were okay, and I lied through my teeth, muttering something about needing a break. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from one of Ethan's ex-girlfriends. Her name was Amanda, and we'd stayed in casual contact over the years because we got along well. She sounded nervous, saying she couldn't keep quiet anymore. My heart lurched. I'd never heard Amanda sound so shaken. She told me she'd seen Ethan recently at a bar, whispering frantically with some woman. At one point, Amanda overheard parts of the conversation. The woman was upset about hush money Ethan had promised, but hadn't delivered. Supposedly, this hush money was meant to keep her quiet. Amanda had no clue what it was about, but the minute she said hush money, my brain lit up with alarm bells. Why would Ethan pay someone to keep quiet, and about what? Putting the pieces together wasn't immediate, but my gut told me something was very, very wrong. When I pressed Amanda for details, she admitted she recognized the woman from a rumor around town. The woman had been dating a married man. The puzzle in my mind rearranged itself. Was it possible Ethan was the one having an affair? And he'd pinned his guilt on my wife to deflect attention? The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Ethan was always short on cash. Paying hush money to hide an affair could explain that. And if he feared it might get out, maybe he planned to destroy my marriage so no one would suspect him. It sounded insane. But so did half the things I'd gone through these past few weeks. Furious and desperate for answers, I tried calling Ethan repeatedly, but he ignored me. That same night, Natalie texted me for the first time in days. "Ryan, I'm not sure what to do, but I need you to know I never cheated on you. I can't stand how you're letting lies tear us apart." Her words hit me harder than I expected. The conviction, the sadness. I stared at that message for a long time, feeling a pit in my stomach. If I had allowed Ethan's manipulations to destroy my faith in her, I might be on the brink of losing my marriage for nothing. I asked Natalie to meet me for coffee the next day. She hesitated, but agreed. When we sat down at a quiet table in the corner of a small cafe, she looked exhausted, her eyes puffy from crying. I felt a wave of shame so strong I could barely speak. She handed me her phone, unlocking it without a word. "Go through it," she said softly. "Read whatever you want. I've got nothing to hide." I hesitated, scrolling through her texts. There was absolutely nothing suspicious, just mundane conversations about work, updates from friends, a chat thread with Daniel about projects at the office. No flirting, no mention of late-night meetups. Nowhere did I see anything resembling the screenshots Ethan had shown me. Either Natalie was the world's best liar, or the texts he'd provided were fabricated. I apologized, voice trembling. "I don't know what to say. Ethan showed me all this stuff. Photos, messages, a video." Natalie bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears. "Ryan, you should have talked to me. I would have told you everything, showed you everything. I was never hiding anything from you." She then revealed that Daniel had started dating someone else from her department a few months back, and that she was tired of me acting like Daniel was some secret lover. The guilt clawed at me, a physical ache behind my ribs. That night, I confronted Ethan at his place. He answered the door with a guarded expression, stepping aside to let me in. "We need to talk," I muttered, barely containing my anger. I demanded he show me the screenshots again, so I could see the phone number. He fumbled for an excuse, claimed he'd deleted them. I pointed out how convenient that was. Then I cornered him about the hush money rumor. His face went rigid. He tried to deny it, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. Finally, I accused him outright. "You're paying that woman off to keep quiet about your affair, aren't you?" He looked like I just punched him in the gut. He swallowed hard, eyes darting around. Ethan let out a shaky breath and started rambling an explanation that made my head spin. He'd apparently been in a relationship with a married woman. When she threatened to tell her husband if he didn't come up with cash, Ethan panicked. He knew if people started whispering about how he was hooking up with a married woman, the rumors would eventually reach me, and I'd see him in a different light. So he decided to preemptively shift blame, weaving a story that Natalie was the cheater, forging texts, and selectively taking pictures at suspicious angles. He claimed he was desperate, that he didn't mean to break us up, but that he had no other choice. Hearing his confession, I experienced a cold, hollow feeling in my chest. I had spent weeks punishing my wife for something that never happened, and the person I'd trusted was the very one who orchestrated it all to hide his own affair. My blood boiled at how easily he'd manipulated me, how readily I'd believed him. I thought about all the tears Natalie had shed, the trust I'd shattered with my own hands. Without a word, I turned and left him standing there, his feeble excuses trailing after me like a bad smell. I went straight to Natalie's temporary apartment, where she'd been staying with a friend. She opened the door cautiously. The moment I saw her, my eyes welled up. I told her the whole truth, every single detail of Ethan's confession. I was prepared for her to slam the door in my face or scream at me, but instead, she broke down crying, just as furious at my brother as she was heartbroken by my actions. We ended up sitting on the floor of her friend's hallway, arms around each other, both crying. I apologized until my voice cracked, telling her I'd do anything to earn her trust back. I expected her to say it was too late, that she'd had enough. Instead, after a long silence, she whispered, "I still love you, but I don't know if I can forgive you for not believing me." That was the most painful sentence I'd ever heard. Yet the fact that she said she still loved me at all gave me a glimmer of hope. We decided we needed time, And therapy. We started going to a counselor who specialized in couples dealing with trust issues. I confessed how my insecurities and blind trust in Ethan had twisted my perception. Natalie confessed how hurt and humiliated she felt, how my accusations had made her question whether I ever truly knew her at all. Week by week, we peeled back the layers of resentment, confusion, and heartbreak. It wasn't easy. She cried through multiple sessions, and I had to face the ugly truth of my own weakness, my gullibility. But slowly, we began to see shards of the bond we once had, shining through the debris. Meanwhile, I cut ties with Ethan completely. He tried calling a few times, sending frantic texts apologizing and saying he didn't want to lose me as a brother, but I ignored them. He'd gone beyond any boundary of decency or loyalty. My only focus was repairing my marriage. I realized that letting Ethan continue to contact me would just reopen the wound and keep the stress alive. I told him to leave me and Natalie alone. And for a while, he respected that. The one time he did corner me in the supermarket parking lot, I told him there was no brotherhood left between us if he could stoop so low. He stood there looking miserable, but I didn't waver. Rebuilding trust with Natalie took months. I had to prove that I no longer believed any of the lies, that I accepted full responsibility for my part in the mess. She, in turn, agreed to try to forgive me, even though she admitted some nights she'd lie awake wondering how I could have ever thought she was sleeping with someone else. Sometimes, just as we were drifting off to sleep in each other's arms, I'd feel her tense up, remembering all the cruel words I'd yelled. We'd hold each other until the tension eased, and I'd whisper how sorry I was until we both fell silent in the darkness. I also had to do my own soul-searching. Why was I so quick to take Ethan's side? Why hadn't I trusted my own wife? I realized part of me had always idolized Ethan, seeing him as the older brother who'd protect me from anything. Another part of me had lingering insecurities. I worried Natalie was too good for me. The moment Ethan planted that seed of doubt, it fed on my existing fears, and I let it grow because I was subconsciously afraid that maybe I wasn't worthy of her. Facing these flaws was brutal, but it was the only way to ensure I never repeated such a catastrophic mistake. Our counselor suggested that Natalie and I have a clean slate weekend, a chance to get away from all the reminders of the past few months and reconnect. We rented a small cabin near a lake, a place full of pine trees and fresh air. We left our phones in the car. For 2 days, we just talked, cooked simple meals together, and tried to remember what it felt like to be carefree and in love. On the second evening, sitting on the cabin's porch, I mustered the courage to say, "I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving you can trust me again." Natalie didn't respond with words, but she squeezed my hand, tears glimmering in her eyes. And that was enough. When we returned home, we made gradual changes. We established a rule of total transparency. If something upset us, we'd say it right away instead of letting resentment fester. If Natalie ever worked late or had after-work gatherings, she'd send me a quick message. Not because she owed me a justification, but because it helped rebuild the sense of security that had been destroyed. I did the same for her. If I was out with friends, I let her know who I was with and when I'd be home. It might sound excessive to some people, but it was what we needed to heal. Months passed, and the rawness of the betrayal began to fade. Natalie moved back in. We slowly redecorated the living room, removing painful reminders, including the blank space where that shattered picture frame once hung. I couldn't bring myself to replace it with another wedding photo just yet, so we chose a simple landscape painting. We started having friends over again, cooking meals and laughing, trying to remind ourselves that joy was still possible. Sometimes, I'd catch Natalie looking at me with a mixture of love and lingering hurt, and in those moments, I'd cross the room to hold her hand, hoping to reassure her that I was here, fully present, not lost in paranoid thoughts anymore. About 6 months after the fiasco, Ethan sent me a long email. In it, he admitted to orchestrating everything, how he'd staged some of the photos, how he'd used a spoofing app to create fake texts that appeared to come from Natalie's number, and how guilt ate at him every night. He claimed to be trying to turn his life around and swore he was done with the affair that started all this. He wrote he was sorry 1,000 times, saying he missed having me in his life. I read the email with a hollow feeling. I didn't respond. I let his words sit there, a testament to the damage he'd caused. It took another 3 months before I managed to write back to him, a short reply acknowledging his apology, but making it clear that regaining my trust, if it was ever possible, would be a long, uphill climb. I told him I needed to focus on my wife and my marriage, and that he had to respect whatever boundaries we set. For a while, he respected that distance, sending only occasional polite updates about his life. I never sought them out, but it was comforting to know he wasn't prowling around, waiting to sabotage me again. Natalie and I eventually renewed our vows in a very private ceremony, with just the two of us and a close friend officiating. It was an emotional day. Tears, laughter, confessions of love that felt deeper than anything we'd shared at our initial wedding. Because this time, we understood the fragility of trust and how painfully it could be broken if we let outside voices come between us. We promised each other that no matter what storms we might face, we'd talk, we'd listen, we'd be each other's first and last confidant. It's been a year now since that dreadful night when glass shards littered our living room floor. Sometimes, when Natalie's phone buzzes, I still feel a faint tremor of anxiety, a ghost of paranoia, but I remind myself that we've survived the worst deception. Other times, I think about Ethan and wonder if he truly regrets what he did. It's a complex tangle of anger, pity, and loss. He was my brother, once my hero, but he nearly destroyed me. Forgiveness might come one day, but I'm not forcing it. My marriage comes first, and so does my own mental well-being. Looking back, it astounds me how easily a few faked photos and text messages could tear apart our lives when sprinkled with the right words and insinuations. I learned a brutal lesson about the power of doubt and how quickly it can erode even the strongest relationships if given free rein. I also learned that, in a marriage, honesty and communication are not just virtues. They're lifelines. Whenever I recall the moment I threw our wedding photo, I get a knot in my chest, but I also see it as a turning point, a symbol of how close we came to ruin and how hard we had to fight to rebuild. I'm sharing this because if anyone reading has seeds of suspicion in their heart, talk. Don't let them fester until they become unstoppable vines choking out the truth. Talk to your partner, show each other respect. Don't believe rumors without seeking real clarity. If you're in a situation like I was, take a step back and really question where the evidence is coming from. It's easy to think you'd never be fooled, never be misled by a sibling or best friend. But sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who can do the greatest damage. Natalie and I still have our rough days, moments when the memory of what happened resurfaces, but we face them together, reminding each other how far we've come. If nothing else, we emerged stronger. Our relationship isn't perfect. No relationship is. But it's built on a foundation that's been tested by betrayal and braced by forgiveness. Every morning, I wake up grateful that she saw enough good in me to stay, even when I couldn't see it in myself. And that's the story of how I discovered my wife wasn't cheating on me at all, and how I learned my brother had lied to cover up his own betrayal. It's a chapter of my life I wish I could erase, but it's there, a testament to how easily we can lose ourselves when doubt takes root and loyalty is twisted into something cruel. I hope it's also a testament to how love, when it's real, can be reclaimed even from the darkest of places, one slow, agonizing step at a time.